Okay, welcome everyone this morning to our webinar on how business owners can save 50% on their bookkeeping. So the topic this morning is on bookkeeping, and I guess the reason why I wanted to share this morning is because we've seen a lot of our clients benefit greatly by taking advantage of the cloud technologies that are coming out now. One of those is Receipt Bank, and I've known Sophie now for a couple of years as we've been working together, and I guess I've just seen the change that something like Receipt Bank in parallel with Xero, the accounting software, can just completely change the dynamics within a business. So I might just get over to the next slide. So I might just do some housekeeping before we kick off. So firstly, I'll introduce Sophie. So Sophie Hossack is the Australian partner manager of Receipt Bank. So as I mentioned, I've known Sophie since I started the firm back in February 2013, and she helps forward-thinking accountants and bookkeepers free up their time previously spent on data entry and helping them grow their practices. Having worked for Receipt Bank in the UK, New Zealand, and now Australia, Sophie's tea-making skills are now truly international, as is her experience of working with Xero partners across the world. So welcome, and thank you for joining us as well, Sophie. And Sophie will be taking a bit of a demonstration on the, I guess, on the powers and the actual practical use of Receipt Bank later. So I might introduce myself as well. So I'm Ben Walker. People call me the Chief Inspiration Officer at Inspire CA. So we're one of the progressive accounting firms that I guess work with Receipt Bank and other Xero partners like them, just taking advantage of the cloud and making a massive difference on businesses. We're based in Brisbane, Australia, and we work best with entrepreneurs and business owners in the service industries. So I also wanted to mention, I'll skip through, this morning that if you've got a pen and paper there, so we're going to be talking, Sophie and I are going to be talking this morning on a few different ways you can implement or change your bookkeeping processes and ways moving forward. So I'd really encourage you to take as many notes as possible, and there will be a live replay of the webinar as well that will be accessible for attendees. The other thing I wanted to mention is definitely use the chat box if you have any questions. So that's on the right-hand side of the screen, and just sing out during the presentation. If we don't get to your question while we're speaking, we've got question times at the end. So just to run through the agenda for this morning, or over the lunchtime, depending on where you are in the world. I think we've got some people dialing in from the UK as well. So thanks everyone for joining us. So we're going to cover a bit on the old school bookkeeping process. You know, what's bookkeeping been up till when we've been able to access these new cloud technologies. Then we're going to go into the three typical types of bookkeeping that we see. We're going to cover on the hybrid best practice, or what we've seen really works well in businesses, and especially working with us, their advisors. We're going to cover a Receipt Bank demo, so I'll hand over to Sophie, and she's going to show us the real practical uses and how it works day to day in Receipt Bank and Xero. After that, I'm going to share 3 case studies with you, and they're, I guess, real clients of ours that have just seen massive transformation with Receipt Bank and implementing that into their business. We'll take questions as well. So Sophie and I have left 10 or so minutes at the end of the webinar this morning to take some questions or some, you know, if you want any more information on what we've shared this morning. And Sophie and I have also put together a gift as well. So yeah, I guess we'll kick off just I guess with the reason why you started your business. And I guess when we go into business, we have this grand vision of what we want it to be, and I'm sure some of you might have read Michael Gerber's The E-Myth, and the E-Myth talks about I guess, a technician that goes into business who's great at what they do, but when you go into business, especially when you're on your own, you've got to learn all these different skills and wear all these sorts of hats. And the E-Myth talks about being run down and discouraged by that. So I guess what I really want to remind you of is, what was your original vision for your business and the way you wanted to run your business, and if something like bookkeeping or other tasks that you do internally that you're not great at, how can they be improved? How can they be automated and free you up to do what you love doing? So again, I just wanted to bring to light that we want to change from being a victim of circumstances in your business, so just rolling with the punches, to actually taking control and being a business by design. So that's the focus on this bookkeeping side of things, is really making that a strong point, and just there's so many benefits that it provides. So, old school bookkeeping. I don't know if anyone can relate to the piles of paper on your desk like this guy, but old school bookkeeping, in terms of the process, is typically, there's a build-up of a pile of paper, and it gets stacked up in an in tray or a shoebox, depending on your setup in the office. But then each month you set aside the time, or you outsource it to a bookkeeper that comes in and processes those receipts. You also enter in the bank statements into your accounting software, which takes time in itself. You enter in all those bills from the invoices in that in tray. Then you reconcile the two together. Anything left over, then you've got a code, whether it's bank fees or you've missed an invoice or anything like that. And then the final step, and where the value is running those key management reports. And that relies heavily on all of those 5 steps above. If one of them isn't right, if you miss pieces of paper, if if you're incorrect in your bank statements, it just takes so much time away from you. But it also holds back the power of your management reporting and being able to run your business effectively and clearly. So this morning, I really want to stress that you can actually get rid of or automate those first 4 steps. So all you're left with is reconciling the two and running your key management reports. So that's a big focus, and that's what we really want for our clients, and anyone who uses Receipt Bank together with Xero can achieve that sort of setup. So skipping into the 3 types of bookkeeping. So these are the 3 typical setups that we see most of our clients and businesses use. So the first type is insourced, and a couple of characteristics of this is, the second is outsourced, and the third is a hybrid model, so between insourced and outsourced. Insourced, typical characteristics is it's very time consuming. Usually the business owner or the person doing the bookkeeping lacks a deep knowledge of accounting, and it isn't necessarily a strength, but they're good enough to be able to do it. The other thing doing bookkeeping internally is it's not your core business, so it will distract you, especially if the business owner is doing it themselves. It distracts you from what earns you your money and the core business that you're in. On the other hand, outsourced. So outsourcing your bookkeeping does definitely free up your time. A disadvantage of outsourcing is that the person that you outsource to might lack deep understanding of your business. So they might come across a lot of expenses they really have no idea about. So it's key, if you do outsource completely, make sure that person understands your business. And the third one there, outsourcing does give you the ability to focus on your core business. And then the hybrid model in between. So it still is time freeing. That second point, you get the best of both worlds. You get deep knowledge, and you get the deep knowledge of the bookkeeping side of things, and you also get the understanding of your business, which is the parts that you can look after as well. And again, you get to focus on the right people doing the right things, focusing on your core business. So I want to cover more on how the hybrid model can work, and I guess the best practice that we've seen works really well. So internally, there's a few processes that can be done internally and that's best handled within the business, and those are invoicing. So day-to-day invoicing and workflow management. That's something that's difficult to outsource, and if you do outsource it, it's not the greatest in terms of cash flow either. So if you've got a long time before you do the work and when you invoice the work, that affects your, I guess, your cash flow in a fairly negative way. Debtor reconciliation I've got there, so that's something that that you can do fairly automated as well. So when a customer or a client pays you, making sure that the reconciliation of that to the invoice is done. So that's usually best done internally, because what that then allows you to do is, through the use of other technology out there, you can actually automate that follow-up. So if someone doesn't pay you for whatever reason, they might have missed or forgotten, you can automate follow-up emails, using the right ecosystem of apps, so that you don't have to worry, you avoid the awkward conversations and that sort of thing. So externally, what an advisor or bookkeeper or an accountant would look after is the bank reconciliation, the GST reconciliation, checking that the invoices are going to the right places, checking that GST is claimed correctly, in the right percentages, and checking and lodging the business activity statement, or BAS, in Australia. And this is the key to getting this working perfectly, is Receipt Bank. It truly is. Every single one of our business clients who comes on board with us at Inspire CA uses Receipt Bank, and we've yet to find someone who wants to give it back to us. It's such a strength, and the reasons why, and Sophie will cover these in more detail, but Receipt Bank processes those receipts from you, and Sophie will share a bit more on how, I guess, on the submission, the different ways you can submit receipts to Receipt Bank, but they process it all. The coding of the expenses, so it will actually guess the account codes, and all you've got to do is make sure they're the right ones, and that's it. And also secure record storage. So again, Sophie will touch on that more, but Receipt Bank allows you to throw your receipts out, so you don't need to keep paper copies for 5-7 years, and the ATO is okay with electronic copies of that. Receipt Bank also, if you use it correctly, you'll actually have 2 electronic copies, one within Receipt Bank and then one attached to each expense in Xero. It's amazing stuff, and it's just a really efficient way of working with your bookkeeping. So now I'm going to pass over to Sophie to show us a bit into Receipt Bank, and I just want to point out as well that Receipt Bank's a fairly big part of Xero. If you have a look on the list of add-ons to Xero, there's hundreds of them, but Receipt Bank, and they're in order of popularity as well. Receipt Bank's right there at the top. It's or very, very much so towards the top, and they've been awarded a number of times over in terms of awards with Xero. So it's great to know that they're not just they're not just having a crack. They're seriously involved in what Xero are doing. So it's awesome stuff. So I'm going to pass the control over to Sophie, and she's going to take it from here.
Awesome, excellent. Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate that intro and that initial background as well. Thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon and wanting to find out a little bit more about Receipt Bank as well. Sorry, I'm hesitating slightly, just making sure that you are able to see my screen okay. So if I move to my presentation, hopefully that's come through okay.
Yes, it is showing.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So yes, hi, I'm Sophie Hossack. As Ben mentioned, I'm the partner manager here in Australia, which is a really great job. I'm really fortunate because I get to work with people like Ben who are really passionate about not doing typical accounting, not doing typical service offerings. They're really going above and beyond. Yes, so We are, as Ben rightly said, we are playing quite a key part in your bookkeeping, in giving you that up-to-date, real-time financial information. So first of all, we are collecting all of those receipts, so all of those small dockets, whether it's petrol station, taxi, cafe, whatever it might be. We're also looking after all of your supplier invoices, so any bills or invoices you're receiving. We're collecting and gathering those, we're extracting the key information, coding it for you, and sending it automatically to Xero. And Ben gave a really good example before of that guy sitting in front of his desk, and I'm not sure how familiar Edwina from Sunrise is, but she tweeted us a couple of weeks ago about coming back from a couple of weeks on the road, being presented with this pile of paper and just hating and resenting having to key it in. So that's the problem, that's the pain point. And as Ben rightly said, historically, the burden of data entry could be solved in two ways. Either you could be doing it yourself, which is clearly a least enjoyable task of running your business. It's not a good use of your time. Or you could pay someone else to do it. So whether that's an admin girl internally, whether that's an outsourced per hour bookkeeper, whatever way, it's a relatively expensive way of doing this basic manual keying in. So software provides this third option. Receipt Bank is one of the leading companies in the world providing the software, and as Ben said, we've got a really tight and seamless integration with Xero, which I'll be showing you later. It works really well in conjunction with Xero. So if you're already on Xero, or if you're moving across and you like it, you like how it looks, how it feels, you like having that control and visibility over your accounts, you'll love how Receipt Bank just slots into that offering as well. So using software will provide you with a low, predictable monthly subscription cost, so you know each month how much the subscription will cost you. There's a faster turnaround time, so within 24 hours all of the data will be extracted and coded. Actually, the average this month so far is just 6 hours, so we're getting really quick now. There's an improved quality control as well, so you can set control over coding and the data extraction, and you have that consistency. It also gives you the ability to have a higher level view of your accounts. So everyone that I've ever met actually loves the Xero bank feed because they can see what's coming in as soon as it's hit the bank. If you send us your unpaid supplier invoices or bills and we send them straight to Xero, you're actually seeing what is going to come out of your bank before it does. So you can see what unpaid bills are going to be having to be paid that week or that month. So it gives you a future look at your accounts as well. So drilling down a little bit into some more of the specifics, one of the first things that we do, and personally it's the thing I get most excited about internally, we all get, I suppose it sounds quite sad really, we all get really keen and enthusiastic on different elements of the software and the company. My personal thing is the submission methods. So making it as easy as possible for you to submit your bill, invoice or your receipt as quickly as possible. So as soon as you get it, you should be sending it straight to Receipt Bank. So there are a number of ways to help you with that. Now obviously there is a traditional method. You can, if you wanted to, physically send us the paper. So each month you could send us the paper invoices and bills. Our scanning team, who are based in Adelaide, will scan and upload those images. That's absolutely fine. You can probably tell in my voice I don't get particularly excited about that. The digital methods, though, are a lot quicker, a lot more intuitive, and just a lot easier for you. So things like the free iPhone and Android app. Now this is by far our most popular submission method. You're able to download this on your phone or on your tablet, and it is so easy and so quick. You simply, in this photograph, you can see there's a pink Add a New Item button. So you simply click on that button, the camera will then be brought up from your phone. You take a photograph of that receipt and you submit it. So there's no data entry on your behalf, there's no keying in, you are literally taking a photograph and submitting that. So ideally, when you're at the restaurant, once you've paid, you just take the photo, or once you've filled the car up with gas, walking across the forecourt, you take a photo. It's as quick and easy as a couple of clicks. So that's really useful for if you're out and about, on the run, easy to just, rather than having your wallet full of those scrappy pieces of paper, taking a photo, and as Ben said, you can throw that piece of paper away because we've got it securely at Receipt Bank. So that's the first method. It is our most popular, but something that works really well hand in hand with that is email in. So you'll all receive your own unique Receipt Bank email address. You can see it's at receiptbank.me. And you can edit and you can customize that. And the beauty of that is you can forward any invoice or bill you receive via email to that address. So whether it's an HTML text, whether it's an attached document like a PDF, it doesn't matter, either way, just forward it to us. It gets even better though with all of your trusted suppliers. So if Custom Cupcakes were a regular trusted supplier of mine, I could give them that email address directly. So actually a better example is Telstra each month. They don't email me personally my phone bill. I've actually given them my Receipt Bank email address. So Telstra email Receipt Bank my monthly phone bill each month, and then I see it within 0. So it's really quick. It's really easy. You don't even have to touch that email because you'll see it where you need it in your accounts. So just make sure that you're not losing anything and everything's just as real time as possible. Okay, so I'm going to jump into, first of all, Receipt Bank, and then I'm going to show you the data and how it gets to 0 as well. So what we've got is, this is the Receipt Bank account. We've got my inbox here. So this is full of all of your new receipts and invoices that are being processed by us. You can see there's a green arrow next to all of them, which means they're able to go across to 0. So I can click into any of these items to then see the scanned image on the left-hand side and the data that we've extracted on the right-hand side. So for example, this is just a photograph of a receipt. We can zoom in quite neatly. The fields that we've extracted are things like the type, the supplier, the date, currency. So we can do a currency conversion for you as well. The total, the GST amount. So that's all the main numerical data. Then it's getting to things like that account code. So we'll automatically match your 0 account codes and set that for you. And we can extract a payment method as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well, so why that's really important. But if I just jump into another example, I've got an invoice here, a supplier invoice here. So again, all of the relevant key information, so the invoice number, invoice date, due date, again, the total, the GST amount, the category. So that's presented for you at this point. You haven't done anything. Printwell printers could have emailed us directly. So actually this is the first time you're seeing the invoice, but importantly, that extracted information. So hopefully that all makes sense. If I go to my suppliers tab briefly, I'm just going to show you, I talked about giving you control and consistency. This is where you can set rules. So you can say by supplier how you always want it to be treated. So Printwell printers will always want it to be, let's say, printing. So then every time we get that invoice from Printwell, it'll automatically be coded to printing and stationery. I can take it a step further. I can set further rules if I wanted to, things like due dates or descriptions. So your phone bill from Telstra could always have the description of phone bill or internet or whatever you wanted if you needed it. And you've also got this option here called auto sync, and that's really cool. That means the information will automatically be published from Receipt Bank to 0. So it's creating that style of bank feed. It's feeding that information 24 hours a day. So as soon as we've processed and it's gone through our quality assurance checks, that invoice will be automatically sent to zero. So that's really cool. That enables you to do reconciling from literally anywhere at any time, because you'll have the supporting evidence already in Xero. But if I just jump into my inbox again, and if I manually publish an invoice across so you can see it, you've got these tick boxes here. If I just select that print well example, I can then click on my publish to Xero arrow here. And importantly, something to note here is it's up to you where you want the information to go in Xero. We're really flexible with how you give the image to us, and we're really flexible with where you need it within Xero. So you just say, I want it to go to purchases as a draft bill, or awaiting approval, or awaiting payment. It can go to expense, it can go to spend money, for example. So here's that example of the Printwell printers. All of the information has gone straight across automatically. So the supplier name, that invoice number, the account code, the total, the GST, and importantly, we've automatically attached that JPEG file for you. So right at your end point, you've got all of the information. So from your P&L, you can drill down and see why marketing costs were so expensive, or why printing costs were so expensive that month, and see the original source document. It's also great, as Ben was saying earlier, for that secure online storage. So if the ATO did ever come calling, you'll have everything securely stored in Receipt Bank for 7 years, but you'll also be able to give them the Xero file with that source document. So you haven't had to do anything in this example, hypothetically. It's come straight from Printwell, the email. Receipt Bank has extracted it, and it could automatically be published to Xero. Or you can come into Receipt Bank, review it, and manually publish it. So that's how it looks. That's the end point. You can then approve it and reconcile it with your bank account. Or if you know it needs to be paid, you can then pay it. So that's the first real example of using the data in Receipt Bank. That will automatically move to the archive where it's stored for that 7-year period. We can do some really cool things, and I'll just touch on them very briefly though. One of them is that payment method that I spoke about. We could search, for example, by cash or by your personal credit card and create an expense report for you. So we can then, if you've got reimbursable expenses, or if your team have got reimbursable costs, you can quickly and easily collate them into an expense report, and this report can go straight to Xero as a bill. So if I just publish this, so you've got a number of different items, 7-Eleven, baked goods, all the typical ones, that will then go across to Xero as a bill that's collated for you. So if I just refresh the page, that will come across in a moment or two. It's always going to stumble a little bit when I'm on a live demo, I'm sure. But if I just try refreshing once more, there you go. So that expense report has gone across. Each of the individual items are there. So if it's for you, you can approve it and associate it to your drawings account, your director's loan account. If it's petty cash, you can allocate it to there. Or if it's a reimbursable cost for your staff, you then know how much to pay them back. So that's another way of using the information. So if I just jump back to my presentation, so as a brief screenshot, all the data is entered, coded, and the image is attached. And here are just a couple of testimonials that we've got on Twitter. And I can categorically tell you, when I first joined the company over 3 years ago now, absolutely nobody was tweeting about us. Nobody at all. Nobody was even searching for us on Google. No one had heard of receipt processing. The idea of using software to do this manual task really wasn't widely known. And now, on a daily basis, we're getting recommendations, we're getting examples of how much of a difference we're making to people and their workflow and their team's workflow. And I particularly love the last one from Matt. Love how Receipt Bank auto-attaches a source invoice to payables in Xero. Super fast way to see what you're paying before you pay. So that's really highlighting that point. We give you an overview of everything you have paid and everything you need to pay as well. So if you feel free to tweet if you do use Twitter, and I will make sure to send you some Twitter love back. But that's really it. That's the presentation from me. So I hope that's given you an insight into Receipt Bank, first of all, what we're doing and how we're doing it. But I also hope it's given you an example of actually what manual tasks can you automate, what can software do for you, rather than that manual burden either on your desk or on your colleagues. So Ben, back to you.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Sophie. That was great. I actually learned a few things while I was on there. I also saw that my screenshot of the award winner in terms of so my last slide, I'll put it back on the screen. Yeah, that's an old one, so it looks like you've won an award for 2013 and no doubt probably again for 2014.
Yeah, I'm not sure about 2014, but yeah, we're actually Xero's #1 add-on partner around the world, as you said before. And we're their add-on partner of the year in Australia as well as the UK. So I think if we ever won it again, we'd become probably pretty unpopular with the rest of the add-on community. But it does show just how much actually the software together works really well in conjunction, as you said earlier. So that's really the reason.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That's brilliant. Alrighty, well, I might share a couple of case studies that we've had internally with our clients. But before I do that, I might just mention now's a great time to put forward any questions from Sophie's presentation there. Also, you might have a few questions from what I'm about to share as well. But just feel free at any time to pop in a question in that chat box. Alrighty, so if I'll jump into the case studies. So the first case study I want to share is a caterer. So he had 30 years in business, had been using MyOb for the last few years, and a really high level of transactions. So a few hundred invoices and receipts a month. It's a lot of fiddly stuff when it comes to hospitality. You've got a lot of invoices for $20, $30 that all add up really. So to give you an idea of his situation before we turned it around, he was outsourcing everything except the invoicing. That bookkeeper he was contracting was $1,200 or more per month, and on an hourly rate. So if there was more workflow and things to fix up that wasn't necessarily it was to do with the software, then it was still charged an hourly rate. That meant monthly reporting for him as well, and monthly debtor follow-ups as well. So the problem with that is that people could go over a month without paying, and they wouldn't, or even the business owner wouldn't find out until that bookkeeper came in and reconciled what had happened throughout the month. So I just it really hurts me to hear that there's that situation isn't uncommon. As an accountant, I just really don't like when people aren't on top of their invoicing and their debtors. It's an easy thing to fix in terms of cash flow. So what we did for them, we shifted them to a hybrid model. So that one I mentioned earlier, and I guess they did the things like invoicing and the debtor reconciliations that works really well for them to do. That means they were always on top of it. And then they left the I guess the more bookkeeping and accounting tasks for us. Their price is now fixed at $600 a month. So that's half of what they were paying a bookkeeper beforehand. What that means for them though, they get real-time reporting in under 7 days. So if they run a profit and loss report, they can run that and be sure of the numbers up until about 7 days ago. In the next couple of case studies, people can get quicker than that, if depends on the efforts they put in internally as well. But this client, 7 days. Not only that, we've set them up as well with automatic debtor follow-ups. So they don't even have to do anything apart from make sure their invoices are reconciled as paid when they do get paid. But all the overdue bills and invoices that they've got outstanding are actually chased up automatically. So again, it avoids that really awkward phone call, that awkward email. So yeah, it's just another thing to add. But the core of this is Xero and Receipt Bank. It just works hand in hand. So the second case study. So we've got an engineering consultant. He was using the MyOb Cloud software live accounts and a low transaction level. So his situation before, he did everything internally. He invoiced as he went, which is good practice. He did his bookkeeping and reporting quarterly because he had to, and that's for BAS. So you have to do the BAS every quarter, and that's his routine really. So 4 times a year, which is quarterly reporting, even but that's reporting on data that's 90 or more days old. And he used to spend hours going through the receipts, that shoebox style, and entering them in one by one. What we did for him, he still works in-source, so he does everything internally, but we've set him up with the system so it just works seamlessly. He still invoices as he goes. He's got real-time bookkeeping, so he does it on the fly. He actually, I had a message from him saying he actually enjoys his bookkeeping now. And on the way into work, into the city every morning, he takes photos on the bus. So that's his bookkeeping time. He gets his reporting down to 24 hours as well if he's on top of the bookkeeping like that. And with that photography, so on his iPhone, plus 20 minutes a week, he can keep his books up to date and reconciled. We've got a third example as well. So this client's a not-for-profit. They've been operating for 7 years, and they've been using MyOb since they started, and they've also got a very high level of transactions. So the situation was they outsourced everything. They didn't touch MyOb themselves. They were paying about $400 a month. If they were paying market rates, that would be closer to $800 or $1,000 a month on an hourly rate. They did their bookkeeping every month, and the bookkeeper ran a couple of reports, and the client didn't really get much value from them. They couldn't really make many financial business decisions based on them. So what we did with them is they've gone from outsourced to fully insourced. It costs them nothing apart from time per month. And there's one person in charge of the whole process there, and it takes them less than 15 minutes per day. They've got, again, real-time reporting, which is under 24 hours. I was saying to Sophie as well before we started this, that this Xero file is the best maintained in our whole client base, and it's probably more crystal clear than mine, actually. So they've got it down to a T. They've got great processes in place. So their Xero file is always up to date. The only transactions you've got to reconcile is the ones that happened the night before. That's it. So yeah, so now I just want to take time for some questions, and I might unmute Sophie so she can speak as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. So Matt's first question is there. So Matt said, Ben, what is a high and low from a transaction point of view? So the engineer I was speaking of has about 20 to 30 transactions a month. So that's fuel, phones, internet, that sort of thing. Fairly low transaction. The not-for-profit and the caterer, they're more up in the hundreds. So 200, 300, 400, depending on the month. Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, so what we see on average, is from a receipt bank point of view, for example, our most popular subscription is actually with an average of up to 75 transactions. So we see that most SMEs and freelancers are within that. But as Ben said, specifically hospitality and those kind of industries where there is a higher level of typically supplier invoices, or if you've got a sales team who are out and about on the road a lot, then it does creep up into the couple of hundreds. So yeah, most people fit within a smaller range, but the ability to use software doesn't really make a difference for you. There's no capacity issue or anything like that with regards to having more or less.
Yeah, brilliant. Alrighty. So yeah, just again, I encourage anyone to put in some questions into the chat box. But one of the questions I get asked as well, Sophie, is how long does it take for the turnaround from when I take a photo to when it appears in Xero, if I've got it all set up to happen and flow through automatically?
Okay, so we say that you will have your information back extracted and coded within 24 hours. So it's like a next day, it'll all be there ready to go in Xero if it's all automated. Typically, though, we are far quicker. So the average turnaround time for the month so far is 6 hours. And depending on what you send us, it makes a little bit of a difference. So, for example, those PDF invoices, our technology is now extracting that information in 2 minutes. So that's really long term where we're aiming to get to. We're talking hours at the moment. We're talking 6, 7 hours at the moment today. In the future, we're really looking at talking about minutes. We know speed and accuracy are two of the most fundamental things we can provide you with. So we're working on both pretty hard constantly. So if you take a photograph, it'll appear within your receipt bank account instantly, as soon as you've got Wi-Fi or 3G connected. And then that data extraction and coding will take place within 24 hours, and then it'll go straight to Xero if it's all automatically set up.
No, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant. I guess I wanted to point out something I picked up in your presentation as well, Sophie, is when you were going through the Xero side of things. So once it's been processed through Receipt Bank, pushed to Xero, other benefits that I guess from a management reporting side of things that I think are one of the biggest strengths of Receipt Bank is that when you are running through your monthly or weekly reports and you drill down to your profit and loss and you see something is way over budget, what you can do is drill down into that expense line, see what makes up that $4,000, for instance. That might be 5 invoices, and you can see one there that it might be a $3,500 invoice. So it's taken it well over what your budget is. You can actually click into that. You can just keep on drilling down through Xero right into that photo, and you can, even if team members make notes before they take a photo, what that was to do with or why it was so over budget. It's just such a great way of record keeping, and the ability, instead of digging through paper and files, just being able to do it all on Xero. Run a management report. Run a management meeting without even notepads and paper. It's all online in the cloud.
Absolutely, and one of the most hideous things about me personally, I think, is that I give way too much away. So I'm always that girl who'll always say the embarrassing facts about herself. One of the classic example of this is we have, for the last 3 years, really worked on the software and providing a good product, and listening to feedback and trying to build great features, things like the iPhone app, things like coding rules. Attaching the image was an absolute fluke. It was one of those things that one day, 3 years ago, I was demoing to a one-on-one, and I suddenly saw this image was attached in Xero. So I phoned up my developer afterwards saying, hey, this is new. And he said, oh yeah, I saw that I could do it, so I just did it. I thought it might be useful. And he had no idea how useful attaching the image was to everybody, to us as a service, to accountants and bookkeepers as the advisor, and ultimately to the end user. So he had absolutely no idea of the impact of attaching the image. It was just one of those kind of fluky things that happened, which don't happen very often, but yeah. Cool. So there are a couple of other questions about error rates and things like that. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some insight into that. As I said, error and accuracy is one of our key things that we are always working towards. So there is always going to be an element of error at this stage. Now that is always, we're trying to reduce that as each, day and week goes by. It really depends on what you send us. So that's the most honest thing to say. If you're sending us a receipt where the date is cut off at the bottom, or you're sending us an invoice that has been through the mill a bit, the ability for us to extract the data is going to be limited. So if you're giving us the information or the image as quickly as possible and you can read the data correctly, our system will be able to as well. So I'd love to be able to say it's a percentage, but actually that's a little bit misleading. It's really, depending what you give us, depends on what data we're able to extract. And with those rules, as I said, you're able to then have consistency and control over different elements. And you can push that as much as you want. So you can set rules for due dates, for payment methods, for that coding. So accuracy is a real key fundamental. We're saying we're removing the data entry for you, and we are. We're not removing the data management for you, though. So whether that's you or Ben and the team, managing that information is still a key part of the advisory side of things. So I hope that's given some sort of background on that.
Brilliant.
There's also another question of where is the data stored? Really good question. We've got a number of different servers, and they're all located in Europe, actually in 2 different countries, one in the UK, just outside of London, and one in Bulgaria, in Sofia. So we've got a number of different servers, and those are the 2 locations currently to date. I wouldn't be surprised in the near future if we do look at holding data, having servers based here as well. But there's no servers or any data stored in America, which is often a question I get asked.
I just want to add to that as well. In terms of the location of that, I've never had a problem with speed in terms of accessing and using Receipt Bank. So actually, that just came to mind then. I've actually never had a problem with it. So it's, all the servers seem to be having an awesome internet service attached to them.
Cool.
Yeah, alrighty. And Tim's got a second question as well, and this is something that I guess I see a lot of on especially in terms of the bookkeeping side of things. But Tim said, what's the process if a client accidentally uploads a statement rather than an invoice?
Yeah, so that's not a problem. We will note that the type of the document is a statement, and you can either choose to publish that to Xero or not. I'd probably recommend that you don't, because if you have sent us the individual invoices that make up that statement balance, you won't need both sides of things in Xero. But you can then, it's no problem if you accidentally send it to us. You can just choose to archive it in Receipt Bank, so you still have the source document stored securely online, but without sending it to Xero. That's probably what I'd recommend.
That's great. And I when you do, I know that there's a couple of accountants on the webinar with us today, and something that I've found with clients is you just need to give them a bit of training when they get started with Receipt Bank, just not to making sure they take photos of the invoices rather than things like the bank transaction or the internet banking printouts. That's something that confuses Receipt Bank a little bit. So it is purely for the invoices, or another example, you can take pictures of the statement if you pay that statement in full and your invoices are on account for that supplier. So there's a couple of different ways, but making sure that you're aware of what the client's doing with them, and they're fully aware of the way that Receipt Bank works.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. That's really good advice. And I suppose just one thing that came to mind when you said that, don't worry if your clients go trigger happy with the iPhone app. Now, it has been known to happen, and they end up sending photos of the same receipt a number of times. Our software will automatically match those. We'll sift through the duplicates for you. We search on things like supplier, date, total, and if there's an invoice number, and it'll automatically dedupe them. So it'll automatically merge them into one item. So you'll never have duplicate items or invoices going across to Xero. We actually filter that through. So your point about the credit card slip and the actual receipt, is a really good one. If the information is on both sides, we'll automatically merge those for you. Otherwise, I tend to recommend taking a photo of both at the same time, and you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Alrighty, so yeah, if there's no more questions, we might move on to the gift. So I'll just go to the next slide. Alrighty, so firstly, I just want to thank you, Sophie, for coming along this morning and showing us a bit of the practical side of things within Receipt Bank and the effect on Xero that has. And I guess what Sophie and I have put together for today is a gift where if you partner with us for your bookkeeping or your accounting, we're happy to include Receipt Bank's subscription for 12 months. So yeah, do let me know if you'd like to have a look into that. I'd also encourage the accountants on the call as well to get in contact with Sophie. So I'll send an email after the webinar this morning and just include contact details to get in contact with her if this is something you'd like to look at. Yeah, if I were to do it again, I would definitely have partnered with Receipt Bank much earlier than I did, which was only a few months into I guess into developing and working with Xero anyway. But it's a great business to be aligned with, and yeah, they've just got great values and awesome to hang out with at the Xero Road shows. So anything else from you, Sophie?
No, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me, and everyone, thank you for being online.
Alrighty. Thanks again, Sophie, and thanks everyone for joining us. See you later.